If you're a software vendor or a system integrator, there's some key things you're probably missing that you need to make your customer successful. What exactly are those things? That's what we'll share here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting, and we're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world to reach the third stage of digital transformation success. And we oftentimes work with software vendors and system integrators representing all different types of software systems. We help clients select the software, we help them implement the solutions that they end up choosing, we help them plan for the implementation, we help with change management. Basically, we do everything that software vendors and system integrators don't do. And what I want to do today is talk about some of the things that are missing that we see with organizations that are working with software vendors. So in other words, what are those things that software vendors and system integrators, the technical implementers, typically miss out on, and what can you do differently to ensure that you're helping make your customers as successful as possible? Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to share a little bit of information about Third Stage Consulting and who we are. Third Stage Consulting Group is an independent technology agnostic provider of consulting services to help clients through their digital transformations. We help with digital strategy and software selection, as well as implementation planning. And during implementation, we provide services related to program management, organizational change, business process improvement, as well as enterprise architecture. These are just some of the services we provide. We have offices in North America, as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check out our resource center, which includes a number of resources that will help you through your digital transformation. And you can access that for free using the QR code here or the links below. You can also reach out to me directly if you'd like to discuss your digital transformation and brainstorm ideas on how to improve where you're headed on your journey. Now let's jump back into today's content. One of the first things you can do as a software vendor to ensure that your customers are successful is to ensure that they, the customers, understand the level of functional fit of your solution against their needs. Now this may sound simple enough and may be something you feel like you've already done, but what ends up happening a lot of times during these projects is software vendors and the sales reps will oftentimes show the bells and whistles and all the strengths of the software. And every system out there has some weaknesses, no matter who you are, no matter what the solution is. There's going to be something your system can't do that doesn't quite line up with what the customer needs. And that's okay, that's part of the process. But what ends up happening is one of two things with customers. One is they either get surprised when they get to the procurement phase or the implementation, when they find out that their requirements are not being fully met by the system. Or what's even worse for you as a software vendor is the customers end up not being able to make a decision before they ever get to the procurement or the implementation. They end up in analysis paralysis because they're looking for that 100% perfect fit silver bullet that doesn't exist, and they end up not doing anything, including buying your software. So one of the things that we often find is that software vendors find a lot of value in having a team like ours come in and help validate the level of functional fit and help really calm down people's minds on the quest to find the perfect software. We know that if a customer evaluates your system and finds that it's an 80 to 85% functional fit, that's going to be good enough. They certainly need to understand what to do about that other 10 or 20% that doesn't fit, but we also know that we need to calm them down and help them recognize that 80 to 85% functional fit is pretty good. Yes, there's risks with the remaining part that we've got to figure out, but that doesn't mean we can't move forward with the procurement process, the implementation planning, and moving ahead. Oftentimes what it takes is an independent third-party objective voice of reason that is not affiliated with a software vendor, isn't there to make commission, isn't going to make any money from the software vendor directly. You need a third party like that that can help provide that credibility to help your customer make a decision. And like I said before, even if they have made the decision, you also want them to also fully recognize where the gaps are so that we can best plan to address those gaps, either through customization or maybe a digital module that you're able to provide them as a software vendor. There's a lot of different ways we can work around that, but the key here is we want to make sure that we conduct that functional fit assessment in an objective way that makes the customer more comfortable with the procurement decision. It also helps them go into the implementation with their eyes wide open. Another way to ensure that your customers are successful in deploying your software is to ensure that they do a proper phase zero implementation plan. And this is something we do all the time with software vendors in conjunction with their teams, is we'll work side by side with software vendors to sit down and really understand the technical aspects of the implementation as well as the non-technical aspects. We tend to focus as practitioners on the non-technical aspects, We don't do what you as a software vendor do on the technical side, but we work together with you to figure out how can we make sure that we put together a complete plan that represents all the client's needs, making sure that we've addressed the people, process, technology, and strategy sides of the overall implementation. So for example, oftentimes we'll go in and we'll help define some of the other work streams that are outside the vendor scope. So you as a software vendor have your technology scope, but there's other work streams like change management, potentially architecture and integration or data migration, or things that the customer is responsible for that they don't know how to do. We can help them do that so that you and your team can be more successful in what you're doing, and ultimately we work together to make the customer more successful overall. So taking the time to do this phase zero upfront is something that we pride ourselves on, and we work with a lot of different software vendors, a lot of different system integrators to ensure that their customers are successful. And if you'd like to learn more about what phase zero is or how we view phase zero and what our methodology is, I encourage you to check out this YouTube video right here. I dive into this topic in a lot more detail, unpacking the different work streams of phase zero. You can also download, using this QR code right here, our phase zero checklist. It's a real simple checklist that lists out all the major activities you want to make sure that your customers complete before they get through the implementation. So I encourage you to look at those two resources, share those with your customers or your prospects, and distribute that as you see fit. I'm always fascinated with how many ERP implementations or digital transformations I see where the technical implementer, the software vendor, is doing all the stuff they should be doing. They're doing it well, but there's other stuff going wrong on the project outside the scope of what the software vendor is responsible for. For example, let's just say the customer is not providing the right resources to help with the train the trainer approach, or they're not providing enough resources to validate requirements or to conduct user acceptance testing. There's a whole host of different things that typically the customer is responsible for that they struggle with. Doesn't mean you're doing a bad job on the software vendor side, but it does affect you because now the customer is struggling, and sometimes they end up blaming you because they can't get their stuff together. So what we end up doing oftentimes with customers and with software vendors is working to really be an extension of the customer team to help them complete some of these other work streams that they're typically responsible for. For example, data migration, data cleanup, data mapping. Some of those activities are typically the responsibility of the customer, but the customer ends up failing or flailing in the approach to get that done. And that's something that we can come in and help fast track and help them get done quickly so that, again, you can do your job, do it well, stay on track, and ultimately end up with a referenceable client that's happy with the work that you've done. Now, at an even higher level, one thing we do is we provide the program management support, really acting as an extension of the client's program management team or their PMO to ensure that they can keep all these different work streams on track and that ultimately they're staying in sync with the work you're doing as a software vendor. So we find that vendors are happier, customers are happier when the customer has better program management, and that's something that a third party like Third Stage Consulting, my team at Third Stage Consulting, can help with. Most software vendors and system integrators I know are really good at what they do in terms of the technology aspects of software design, build, deployment, test, all that stuff. But they're usually not good at change management. That's not a bad thing. It's just because it's not their wheelhouse. It's not what they specialize in. However, change management is critical to the success of a project, and typically change management is the responsibility of the customer. But again, customers oftentimes don't know what that means. What do we need to do from a change perspective? How do we define what future state jobs look like? How do we define what the change impacts are and help navigate people through the change? How do we ensure that we've got the right trainers in place and that we're training people effectively, that we're communicating effectively? All those things that have nothing to do necessarily with what you do as a software vendor, but they are very relevant to the customer success. And this is an area where you can help make your customers more successful by bringing in the right change management resources that will help keep things on track and help people not resist the change that you're trying to deploy with your new technologies that you've sold to the customer. So one thing you could do is make sure that you have a solid change management partner, and that's something that we oftentimes do working in parallel with software vendors, is to ensure that the customer has a solid change management program and plan in place to make them more successful in their overall initiative. Now, if you'd like to learn more about what change management is, or if you'd like to share a resource with your customer to help them understand change management a little bit better, I encourage you to read this guide to change management. You can download it right here with this QR code. You can get it for free on our website. It unpacks change management, it demystifies it, provides a lot of guidance that your customers might benefit from. One of the best ways you can make your customer successful is to ensure that they have an independent and objective advisor to help them through some of the things I've talked about here today, as well as some of the things I haven't gotten to in this video. Having that independent outside voice of reason that's objective, isn't experiencing any sort of conflict of interest of trying to sell more software or more technical services, can help your customer be more successful, to ensure that they're keeping the project on track and to ensure that all the areas that are outside of your realm of expertise don't end up creating problems that end up getting blamed on you later on. And we see this all the time, especially in failures that we help recover, or in expert witness cases where the implementation has gotten to the lawsuit phase and now a software vendor is being sued. We often find that the real reason why the project failed wasn't because the software vendor didn't do what they needed to do, but it's because they didn't have an advisor to help them through all the other stuff that they were responsible for and that were critical to the success of the project. So hiring that outside independent advisor, hiring a company like Third Stage, or at least bringing in a company like Third Stage to your customers to work side by side with your team, can be one of the best ways you can ensure that your projects are successful, and ultimately so you don't end up having to hire us later on for expert witness work, because the last thing we want is to see a customer or a vendor get into a lawsuit. And it's certainly a lot cheaper for the customer to hire us early in the process during the implementation rather than waiting until things get off track. So if you'd like to learn more about how you might partner with our company to help your customers be more successful, I encourage you to reach out to me directly. I've included my email address below. Send me an email. I'd love to chat with you about how we might help you either in specific pursuits or partnering more broadly with you to go to market, to help you win more work, to help you make your implementations more successful, all while retaining our independence and not receiving any sort of commission from software vendors. We like to work side by side in parallel, in tandem with software vendors while maintaining that independence. So feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to brainstorm ideas with you. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day. 5% of their software requirement. God. We know that if a customer, oh my God, this, I will never finish the sentence in my entire life.